Oh, I see one right now. So we just busted that myth.
If this battle hadn't happened, American culture probably wouldn't exist as it is today.
Oh, which is just crazy. This is such a mass graveyard.
Warning, this video contains a lot more history than we usually put in our videos. Watch at your own discretion. Unfortunately, our time at the Highlands is coming to an end, and we're pretty sad about that. So we left the boys because we're pet sitting, and now we're on our way to Inverness, and more specifically Culloden. We're going to be exploring a very historic site. Really excited because Olivia and I, is one of our favorite TV shows. Has to do a little bit with the history of the Highlands and all that. It's called Outlander. Check it out if you haven't watched it. Really good show. And after that, we have one last night in Edinburgh, and then we're gonna head to Poland. Let's do it. But before Culloden, we're gonna make a quick stop for some breakfast. It's supposed to be delicious, one of the best cafes in Inverness. So I'm really hungry, I'm excited to try it. Let's go. That was probably one of the best breakfast rolls I've had here in
Yeah, me too.
the UK. That
really
was really very messy, but really good.
Very fresh, hot, nice people.
Yeah, super nice people, service. Now we're all fueled up, so let's go check out the battlefield.
It is with great honor, sadness, extreme emotion to welcome you to the Culloden Battlefield. If you're not aware of what it is or what happened or where we are, we're about 10 miles outside of the city of Inverness, where Highland culture finished as it was. If this battle hadn't happened, American culture probably wouldn't exist as it is today, because this is the battle where the government forces fought with the Jacobite soldiers, which a lot of people think it was all Highlanders, the Scots, against the English, but that's completely untrue. For the most part, that's how it was, but it was a mix of different countries, different cultures on each side. So you had Scottish people on the government side, you have the Highlanders and Scots on the Jacobites, but it mainly was a Highland army. The Jacobites essentially wanted to push the Hanovers, King George, off the throne and get their true King James back on the throne, and they had been fighting for this for a very long time. There were quite a few uprisings also leading up to this. The night before the battle happened, the Duke of Cumberland, who was the leader of King George's army against the Jacobites, it was his birthday, his 25th birthday, which is so crazy to think that you have two leaders, and I think Bonnie Prince Charlie, who led the Jacobites, was probably around the same age, if not younger. You have these barely adults leading these huge battles and wars, and it's mind-blowing to think about. But it was his 25th birthday. He gave his soldiers a break. Everyone celebrated. They all had something to drink. And the Jacobites that night thought, this is our opportunity where we can come in on Duke of Cumberland's army because they'll be a little hungover, maybe they're sleeping in, catch them off guard, slaughter them. Essentially, that was a bit of a failure because the Jacobites were really low on energy, food, provisions, everything they needed to be strong going into the battle. They were very weak. There were so many people on the Jacobite side that were trying to convince Bonnie Prince Charlie to turn around, retreat, but he wasn't having any of it. And so the morning of, the Duke of Cumberland's army wasn't caught off guard. They were preparing because they heard from a source further out that the Jacobites were coming in. And that day, on April 16th, the Jacobites lost their cause for once and for all, and within 40 minutes, Around 1,050 people died, 1,000 of them being Jacobites, 50 of them being the government's troops. And it's really sad, because when you learn back in history, you can see that they never had a chance after all. When you had the government's army with their cannons, their strong artillery, when you had the Jacobites with some bigger equipment, but they had their Highland charge, and they were so passionate for their cause that they were willing to die for it. And again, it's important to remember that it's not good versus bad. You had all kinds of people on each side that were being led by very young and irresponsible leaders that didn't really care about their people.
Along this straight line that I'm on right now, there's a bunch of stones with clan names written on them. And if you can see, it's kind of like a mount. And in each of these tombstones, about 150 to 200 men are buried underneath, which is just crazy. This is such a mass graveyard. And actually, although there's clan names on each of these tombstones, it doesn't necessarily mean that the men buried underneath were from that clan. In fact, they would almost be unrecognizable after the battle. And it wasn't until about 150 years later that someone decided to put these tombstones up and commemorate them. The weather for the battle is actually pretty similar to what it is today. We get a tiny bit of sun, but then mostly clouds and rain every few minutes or so. We can see the starting lines on both sides, and we're kind of right down the middle of it. So this is probably where they charged at each other and they met. And walking throughout this whole moor, it's a very eerie feeling. You can definitely sense that something really sad has taken place in this land that we're walking on. And Olivia was saying that there's actually no birds flying over. Oh, I see one right now. So that was a myth. That was a myth. Basically, people say that no birds fly over the battlefield because of the dark energy it has and all the death that has taken place. But we just busted that myth because we saw the bird fly over. And I actually hear some birds in like the trees. I have to say, before we came here, I had a little bit of a different image in my head. I thought it would be more sectioned off and things would be more official, just because of how I was reading online, how good of a care they take of this place. But people bring their dogs on a walk on the battlefield. There's paths, and we can actually see some sheep poop, so that probably means that sheep come and graze the area. So I think it's really cool how they have integrated it. They haven't taken away from like the locals just because this is a historical site. They're still doing excavations to find more artifacts from the battle. And so you only have to pay for the museum, which is £14, and it includes a guided tour of about 20 minutes onto the battlefield. But otherwise, you don't have to pay anything to just come and walk until maybe you'll know a little less, but you can do your research online and come at a free outdoor museum. All right, now we'll go to Olivia for a bit of a history lesson, as this part of history is one of her favorites and she has a lot of knowledge to share with us. Olivia, what do you gotta say?
So in the weeks and month, I think, after the battle, the government soldiers have pretty much taken over the Highlands and Highland culture. They had gone all around to the area, and if there were any remaining Jacobite soldiers, they would either take them to prison, kill them on the spot. So you would think if someone was even part of a clan or they were a Highlander, that they would be killed anyone. That wasn't true, because if you could somehow prove you weren't a Jacobite, you'd be fine, you'd survive. But this was then the beginning of the Highland clearances. Highlanders were kicked out of their land, all Highland culture was made illegal, Gaelic was illegal, and then that is what led to many Highlanders moving either to other parts of the country, the lowlands, to England, or that was when there was the mass migration to other parts of the world, I think in Australia even, but for the most part the New World of the colonies, as we know now, the United States, where many of the Highlanders that couldn't stay or they had a way to leave and come to the New World, they came to the US and settled in the colonies, and it's really interesting. I've heard a lot of Southern American accents here, and I bet you a lot of people come to research their ancestry because that's how they exist. That's how the American culture and the wonderful melting pot as it is today, which is very sad that it happened from something like this, but that just shows even the US and so many other countries in the world would not exist the way it is today if this battle didn't happen. Now we come to today, where we see such a strong sense of Highland culture now and such a strong interest in the world as well, and you would think, how did we get from there, where everything was illegal, to today where there's almost like a revival of some sort and interest internationally? Well, that happened where after a long time things were illegal, things stayed the way they were, but then during certain royals and certain places in government later down the line, people became interested. So Queen Victoria had a really big interest in Scotland and the Highland culture, and that was when Balmoral Castle was built, and why the royals today still have such a big connection to Scotland. And then slowly it became revived, and even though we'll never know how the country would be today if this battle didn't happen, it's still really beautiful to see how many people still care, how the people are still connected to their culture, and it's really beautiful, and I'm really happy to be here.
All right, we hope you enjoyed this history lesson of Culloden.
And thank you for coming with us. I'm happy to finally have visited.
Yeah, it's been a long time for you coming. Now we're going to continue our drive to Edinburgh, about 3.5 hours from here, and we'll see where the journey takes us.